We hit them big. We struck them good. We're in that thing. Listen, when someone's standing on something that you want, you make them the enemy. And this may be it. This may be the time. I've been talking about it for a few weeks now. But apparently the president just disclosed that we actually are doing kinetic activity in Venezuela, that maybe we are now in a ground war with Venezuela. We're doing strikes in Venezuela. However you want to summarize it, it can be those things. President Trump just dropped, in my opinion, a bombshell announcement that changes the entire scope of the U.S. operations in South America. We are starting to pull diplomats from some of those countries like Suriname, however you pronounce the name of that country. We're telling our ambassador, come January, you're out of there, bruh. And we're kind of slowly letting die on the vine the relationship with countries such as Colombia. We're elevating the relationship with countries such as Argentina by giving them bread. And now here we go, Venezuela. We are now apparently doing strikes in their country, within their borders. For months, we've seen the U.S. Navy, the Coast Guard, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, all of them targeting different activities from Venezuela, whether it's their communication abilities, going for some of their GPS, jamming some of their GPS trackers, physically attacking what they allege to be drug boats at sea. But now the president claims that the U.S. has moved onshore. According to Trump, a big facility in Venezuela has been knocked out. Is this the start of a new kinetic phase of Operation Southern Spear, something that has Southern Spear has been announced since earlier this year? Let's break down exactly what was said and what that means for the region. And in my opinion, what happens next. First off, make sure you hit the like button on this video. It helps push me out to other folks. And also let me know that you're a real one by putting Battalion down below, and I will heart your message. And let me know your thoughts about us possibly going onshore and getting down with Venezuela at their turf. Let me go ahead and finish lighting this up. The news first surfaced during a radio interview on 77 WABC, which is, I think, an affiliate out of the New York area. It was confirmed by the president during a meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. Trump stated, quote, "They have a big plant or a big facility where the ships come from. 2 nights ago, we knocked that out," end quote. He described a major explosion in a docked area used for loading drug running boats, calling it an implementation area. He was blunt about the result, quote, "That is no longer around," end quote. While the president didn't name the exact location, social media reports from Christmas Eve pointed to a massive fire and explosion in industrial owned in the Zula state. And so I also reached out to my father-in-law to see if he can confirm. And he says there was a fire in that area. He didn't know what it was from. Of course, the Maduro regime is not going to tell their citizens if they get hit. At least they were going to try not to. So he doesn't know what it's from. While some companies claimed it was an accident, the timing matches what the president is saying. So we got companies that are in the area saying it's an accident. I would imagine the president knows what he's talking about. You know what I'm saying? Department of War, give him a little bit of juice. And you got to think about how we layered this. We started with special operations with the SEALs conducting missions at sea. Now we brought in DHS and we incorporated Coast Guard and their elite forces. Now we're thinking about Delta Force and actually starting stuff within the country. Is that the next step? I think the answer to that could be yes. Now, here's the thing. There's a whole lot of naval vessel buildup, thousands of troops, at least 15,000 that we know of, and just a lot going on in that area. This isn't happening in a vacuum. This is a part of Operation Southern Spear, a massive maritime quarantine that the Trump administration launched earlier this year. I call it a quarantine. I think that's the most generous term to use versus calling it a blockade. I don't know. We have to think about we sanction vessels, and then we can conduct the maybe taking of those vessels. I do have questions about that. Side note, when we take a vessel at sea, what happens to the crew? Where do they go? If you're just literally someone who polishes brass on the ship, you're not a part of the bridge. Do you get locked up? Do you get sent back to your country? What happens to the stuff on the ship? Is it ours now? The oil, the containers full of crap. What are the containers because all oil rigs aren't just full of oil. Some of them are full of containers of cars or vehicle, whatever. Things that could be on there as well. Is that shit ours now? Like, how does that stuff get worked out? Those are questions I have. More to come on that. The stats. Since September, the U.S. has conducted at least 29 strikes on vessels, resulting in over 100 casualties/deaths, or whatever you want to call them. The goal, I'm going to say what I think the goal is, and I'm going to tell you what the White House says. When someone's standing on something you want, you make them the enemy. I think it's just as simple as that. Okay. We want those minerals. We want that oil. We want our companies to get back in there. The White House says that the goal is targeting narco-terrorism, the Maduro regime, primary revenue streams. They're saying some of those revenue streams are also the oil-producing assets and trading with countries that shouldn't be doing it and stuff like that. Escalation up until now, these were mostly strikes in international water. If the claims by President Trump are true, this marks the first known U.S. land strike on Venezuela soil during this campaign. It's a major escalation. And there's a lot of folks who have silence and skepticism. There's a lot of folks who have more questions. What the interesting part is when it comes to silence from the Maduro regime is that for now, maybe that's kind of confirming that this could be true. The Pentagon and the CIA have declined to comment on the president's comments, which is typical for covert operations. Doesn't matter. The president can disclose whatever he wants. That doesn't mean you're allowed to talk about it. Okay. That doesn't mean that your orders, just because the commander in chief talks about it, doesn't mean you are now allowed to talk about it. So the Pentagon and CIA aren't going to be talking about this until they're allowed to. So you got to think about that. And even more surprising, the Maduro government in Caracas hasn't officially denounced a U.S. attack yet, potentially to avoid admitting how vulnerable their infrastructure really is, because they're labeling the explosion as an industrial accident to stay out of a direct war. They're clamping down on dissent. If you're in these streets and you support the actions of the U.S. or you support Maduro being bounced up out of there, any of that type of stuff, they're coming down on you. They're using safety and security and what's going on with the United States as a reason to come down on your ass. And so for them to admit to a vulnerability in one of their facilities is not about to happen yet. So critics, including some in Congress, are raising questions about the legal authority for a land strikes without a formal declaration of war, while the administration points to the defense of the American people against the flow of illegal drugs as a justification. I've said this before. I don't think they need to alert Congress before they go in. I just don't. I may be wrong. I do think they need to alert Congress within a certain amount of days. I think it's 60 days or maybe it's 30 days, but we have precedent for this when it comes to, the Bay of Pigs happened before alerting Congress. It was a failure, but it happened before alerting Congress. And Noriega in Panama happened before fully briefing and getting War Power Act. Like, we have precedent for this. It is what it is. Both presidents, or both Democrats and Republicans before President Trump, have done this. So I just would kind of stop beating that drum of like, tell us before you do it. Tell us before you do it. I don't think that's going to happen. All right. And quite frankly, I don't think it needs to happen. But so is this a one-off strike? Or are we looking for a sustained bombing campaign against the Venezuela infrastructure with 15,000 U.S. personnel, troops, assets, carrier strike groups already in the Caribbean? The pieces for the on the board are much for a larger conflict than a small one. Venezuela's not going to really be able to hit back. They're going to hit back, in my opinion, in the ways I've described many times before. Smaller covert stuff. If we go in country trying to attack our troops directly, not in a massive way, cyber attacks, getting help from the Russians and the Chinese, et cetera, it also Iran. That's really going to be about it. What do you think? Is this a right move to stop the cartels, or is it an escalation of aggression, as Maduro claims? Do you think that we're going to turn up the dial on this? I think the answer is yes. Me personally, I'm just going to tell you right now. Weakness would be pulling out and doing nothing in Venezuela. all, regardless of your opinion about it, most people would perceive President Trump to be weak if he now pulled the chalks and everybody just went back to the Mediterranean, or they go back to patrolling the Arctic Circle and we send Marines back to Camp Pendleton or go to Camp Lejeune or go wherever. People are going to be like, well, what the hell? What the hell? Like, why do we have all those people there if we didn't do anything? So I don't particularly think it would be weak if we decided the mission is over, but I'm just telling you, for like the average person who chest beats and who's maybe a war hawk or a dove, they would see it as weak. Me, I think avoiding conflict is not necessarily a weakness, but everybody has their own opinion. But there you have it. We struck a big facility. I'm looking for more evidence of it. I'll have you more videos to come when we get more, hopefully, third-party evidence. It's not Venezuela. That is not us. You know, a lot of times there's satellite imagery that from satellites flying over the world that are owned by third-party companies that have nothing to do with us. They can kind of confirm this stuff happening. And that's when I would know that it's some like real shit that's going down. But first time stopping by, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you part of the battalion. If this is not your first time stopping by, well, thank you once again for watching me run my grape. For everyone else, we'll speak soon.